So with COVID, many of the court hearings and proceedings have been remote on Zoom. What practical effect do you think the pandemic is having on the courts and how they proceed going forward?
Well, John, I think that the COVID and its restrictions have really affected not only the courts, but the entire practice of law. As a practical matter, I think that most firms will reduce their footprint for office size and have people working remotely, in addition to some days in the office. With respect to the courts, what's happened is on the civil side, the pandemic restrictions have pretty much shut down any civil juries, although the courts are trying to get things up and running. I know that a lot of the courts, at least here in New England, were hoping to get things going after Labor Day, but now with this new Delta variant, I'm not so sure what's going to happen. As a practical matter, what the problem is that results in a delay of the trial. And when the trial is delayed, interest still keeps running. So, for example, if you're venued in Rhode Island, where interest runs at 12% from the date of the accident, not from the date the suit was filed, it adds a tremendous amount of interest on any award. So that's one thing that's really made a difference. As a practical matter, there's little or nothing the law firms can do until the court is able to run the jury trial successfully. I don't see remote jury trials as coming into everyday use. That's just my thought. With respect to hearings with the court, motions, that type of thing, I don't think it's really affected it that much. The hearings are timely, right to the point, just like you were there in person. It saves a lot of time getting to the courthouse, this type of thing. I think it's going to be used throughout the court systems in New England, depending on how difficult it is to actually schedule the hearings. I've heard some courts find that scheduling the hearings from the clerk's office is very difficult in terms of getting all the pieces together remotely, at a specific day, at a specific time. That is just a very practical thing. And I think you're going to see some of the courts perhaps try and have more in-person hearings. I think it would be a good idea to have the in-person hearings as a practical matter, because the lawyers get to talk to each other. And it's amazing how much business can get done if you're just standing there talking to your opponent. With respect to depositions, remote depositions now become pretty routine. I think they're, probably 90 to 95% as effective as a live deposition. It can be a little awkward with documents shown to the witness, this type of thing. I would like to be in the same room as a plaintiff, just to take a look at him and see what, how he comes across in person. Maybe not so much for witnesses, depending on their importance. With respect to mediations, I think, well, all the mediations I've had since COVID started have been in person, remote, but as a practical matter, I don't see them as being any different than before. I think it's just, as long as your mediator can do the remote rooms for everybody to separate, they work just fine.
Do you think you lose anything from a effective standpoint if everyone isn't in the same room at a mediation?
You know, not necessarily. And the reason I say that is on the bigger cases, with experienced counsel, most, a good portion of them, people don't want to do the opening statements because everybody knows the case. So you separate right away. There isn't that much interaction. So I don't think you'll lose anything mediating a case remotely. I think it works just fine.
Do you think after the pandemic is over, we'll hold on to any of these remote proceedings just because it may be more cost effective and from a defense cost standpoint may impact the bottom line? Sure.
I think that especially if you have a case where you have witnesses around the country, rather than spend 4 days going to California and back for a 3-hour deposition, you can do it remotely, in 3.5 hours. So I think that's going to stay, especially for long distance depositions. I think the courts, I think they're happy with I get the impression the judges find the Zoom hearings just as effective as in person. Mediations, I definitely, I'll see those, remote becoming a big part of that operation. Plaintiff's depositions, I can see those coming back in person. We started to do a few in person. So that's my
Makes
thinking.
sense.
How's that?
Great.
Okay, great. Thanks for asking, John.
Sure.